If I had one last tiny morsel of food, I would give it to my kids before I would give it to my neighbor. I would not, however, feed my kids cake before my neighbor had bread. Sorry, guys. Blessing is not meant to be hoarded and guarded. Blessing is not meant to be maintained and contained. What you are given, you are meant to give away. Now, do the Jewish people live up to that? Do any of us live up to that? Well, occasionally maybe. But I think what's important to see here is just how deeply this idea is in the Hebrew identity. Blessing is meant to be shared. I think that's important, particularly right now in our political climate where there's a lot of talk about me and mine. In fact, in Christian thought, there's something called the Ordo Amoris. That means the order of loves. And it's a way to think about our call to generosity and care and kindness in relationship to our responsibilities and our obligations in the world. It is not, however, a way to excuse ourselves from caring for our neighbor. So, for example, I have certain obligations to my kids and to my wife that exceed my obligations to my friends. It's just because of the nature of the relationship and the commitments that I've made throughout my life. That's a way for me to order my loves. So as an extreme example here, if I had one last tiny morsel of food, I would give it to my kids before I would give it to my neighbor. I would not, however, feed my kids cake before my neighbor had bread. Sorry, guys. Point is, there is room for levels of our relationships. There's room for intensity of obligation and responsibility, but to order love well is actually about calling us to move past the me and mine limit that comes naturally to us. In fact, the whole intent of the Ordos is to say, love does not stop at me and mine. And so here, Simeon, finally holding the Christ child in his arms, everything he's been waiting for all his life, what he knows now is that the glory of his people, Israel, is really the light that shines for everyone, everywhere. In other words, good news for us has to become good news for those near us. If it's not gospel, and if it's not gospel, then maybe it's not really Christmas we're celebrating after all. Here's the thing. It's fashionable at times to decry the excess and the consumerism of Christmas. By the way, I'm here for all of that. There is no criticism of excess in Western culture that goes too far, in my opinion. At the same time, though, I'm a parent. The truth is I want my kids to be excited about what's under the Christmas tree. I want them to have fun that day and enjoy. I want them to build good memories around the season. I want them to get exactly what they wanted, just like Simeon did. But what I really want is that over the course of their lives, every good gift they receive, at Christmas or otherwise, that a lifetime of blessing would slowly help them realize that every good thing that comes to them can be something good for those near them as well. And if I'm being honest, I think that's really what I want for myself this Christmas too. Because it's easy to get what we want. It's much harder to become who we want to be. And at its best, I think Christmas can actually help us get there.